The killing in the United States of black American George Floyd by a now convicted white policeman has intensified conversations around the world about just how far has the global village come in the fight against the scourge of racial injustice.
Mr. Floyd's killing was viewed by some as a tipping point in a series of incidents in the United States where black and defenseless Americans have had their lives snuffed out by the police. The treatment of Mr. Floyd triggered some anger not only in the United States but across sections of Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean.
And a Jamaican icon is making his voice heard on the international scene as black people across the globe continue to push for fairness and equality. He has written a book entitled Why We Kneel, How We Rise, which is to be published soon. We are pleased to be joined on Nationwide this morning by former West Indies fast bowler and noted cricket commentator, the legendary Michael Holding, who I gather is joining us from the United Kingdom. Good morning to you, Mikey. I gather it's good afternoon in the UK. How are you?
Yes, it's good afternoon from here, but good morning to you in Jamaica. I'm fine, thanks. I'm pretty good.
Well, many of us have thoughts about issues of consequence around the globe, but we don't put it in writing. Tell us a bit about the factors which led you to finally say, look, let me pen a book, or as it were, cause a book to be typed about this matter, which has caused anger around sections of the globe.
Well, it stemmed from an opportunity that I got on Sky last year before the West Indies England test match down at Southampton, when I was asked to speak about the Black Lives Matter movement and racism in general. And after saying what I had to say, I had such tremendous positive feedback from people all over the globe. And with people close to me, like in the commentary box and others telling me, I can't stop there. Right. I have to keep going. What do I do next? That sort of a thing. That's where the book stemmed from. Although I did not intend initially to write a book, not even when people said to me, I have to keep going, because I figured that if what I had said, people couldn't understand the situation from that, then they didn't want to understand. So there was no need for me to keep going and to say anything else. But then I start getting calls. The first call I got was from Thierry Henry, who said that he could identify with exactly what was going on, what I had said, and we needed to talk more. Then I got contacted by Naomi Osaka, who also said she could identify with what I had mentioned about my parents, because her parents, as you know, one is Japanese, one is Black Haitian. And because of all that build-up, I then decided to write this book. And of course, I got back in touch with these people, Thierry first and Naomi, and asked them if they would be happy to be involved in the book. And they said yes, they'll be happy to be involved in the book. And so I then started to hunt other people who were willing to get involved. Of course, Usain Bolt was not that difficult to find. He got involved, and I got a lot of other big names from around the world to be involved. So that is the genesis of this book.
Even though you've made that point about the big names being in, and because you've said that though, the Guardian quotes you are saying that the book is likely to make some white people uncomfortable, and that's fine. Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, well, I've spoken a lot of truth in the book about the history of black people and the dehumanization of the black race. And of course, that will make people uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, one good friend of mine who works with me in the commentary box said to me, "Boy, Mikey, this is a hard book for white people to read." And I said, yes. It was hard. Some parts of it were hard for me to write as well. Because when you learn about the atrocities that took place, and you know that it took place against your own race, it is not easy to absorb all that. But it is something that has to be said. If an alcoholic is going to be cured, that alcoholic has to accept, first of all, that he is an alcoholic, and then he can get help. Now, people who get uncomfortable by this book, that is fine, but they must accept what took place in history and realize that it was an injustice and try to heal. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere.
You grew up in Kingston, Mikey, or you were born in Kingston, but your playing career and your commentating career has taken you across the world, far removed from Kingston College, that great institution you attended. Tell me, how big a problem is racial injustice around the world?
Well, we see it. We see the problems. We follow the news every day. As I said, didn't personally come across a lot of racism when as a young man growing up in Jamaica. My first real experience of it is when I left Jamaica. And when I left Jamaica and came across it, I ignored it. I kind of just duck water off a duck's back. You know, I'm going back to Jamaica. I don't have to put up with this in Jamaica. So I just moved on. But as we have seen with this George Floyd situation, this is not the first time we have seen the murder of black people in America. But this one was so vivid. People stood there watching it. It was filmed. And the gentleman who did the murder, you could see in his face he had absolutely no regrets, no remorse either after the man had died. And that was just the last straw. People just couldn't deal with that anymore. So that is what has started it. And as we have seen around the world, there have been incidents. But that was just, I think, the last straw. And people said, you know what, we can't just keep on putting up with this and moving on. It's time for action.
Michael Holding, please stay with us. We want to take a break, but I want to come back to you because one of the things you said is you weren't exposed to racism in Jamaica. You were coming back to Jamaica. I want to throw it to you. Given your experience and what you've been exposed to, how big a problem you think racism is in Jamaica in reality? Stay with us. We'll take a break and we'll come back to hear from Mikey Holding with his views on that question. Thank you for staying with us right here on Nimmy FM. You're listening to This Morning. I'm Daniel Archer.
And I'm Abka Fitz-Henley.
We're talking to fast bowler, former West Indian fast bowler and noted cricket commentator, the legendary, is it Whispering Death? Am I correct? Michael Holding. You're sharing with us this morning about your book, Why We Kneel, How We Rise. And I threw to you the question, given your exposure, what you know now, and your comments about you never experienced this racism while in Jamaica. What's your take on racism in Jamaica now?
Daniel, I still haven't experienced racism in Jamaica. I have experienced a lot of classism, which is totally different. It has nothing to do with the color of anyone's skin.
Right.
That has to do with people who believe that they are better than other people because of the heights in society in which they have reached. I don't know of any racism in Jamaica in today's world. When I was growing up as a little boy, I heard about it, and I know my mother experienced it. And I know of Evan Blake, who lived at the top of Dunrabbing Avenue, where I grew up, experiencing it even before I was born. But if anyone can tell me about racist incidents in Jamaica, no, apart from somebody just shooting off the mouth, I am not aware of it. I know a lot about classism, but I'm not aware of racism to be a problem. Anywhere you go, you'll always have some form of little racism somewhere in some corner. But I don't know of it being a problem in Jamaica up to date.
To what extent, Mikey, were you able to offer in your book thoughts on how do we fix the scourge of racial injustice around the world?
Yes, well, that is what it is all about. Throughout the book, I say why we kneel, because of the injustices of the past and because of the problems that we have had over so many centuries and now recent decades. And how we rise is how we get over it, which is a matter of education and educating all, not educating just white or educating black, educating everyone as to the real history of the world. And when I say the real history, I don't mean what you read in history books. Because when I was growing up in Jamaica and going to school, the history I was taught are a bunch of lies. I want people to learn the real history, because a lot of black innovators and black great people black and people of color who have contributed so much to the world with innovations and discoveries and all sorts of things have been airbrushed out of history. And that is the plan, to make sure that young black and people of color do not know of these great people so they don't know who to emulate. That is the plan. And we need to teach all the great things that people of color and black people have done, so that people of color and black people can sit down and say, hey, if these people did this, I can aspire to it as well. And that is what we need to do. And we need to educate the white people who think that they are the only ones who have ever done anything great, that black people and people of color have done great things as well. So that this false narrative of white superiority is thrown through the window.
You know, as you raise a whole notion of the false narrative, this brings into question now what you say was you being derelict in your duty to, back in the day as a sportsman, to speak about racial bias, not only in sport but in society. I want you to think about that and to balance that now with cases like Colin Kaepernick and people who in sports where they say politics and such views have no place in sports. What's your take on that?
Well, I accuse myself throughout the book of being selfish and ignoring it because I never experienced it back home. And I said perhaps I should have been more vocal, been more vociferous and talking about it and shout out about it. But history is a great teacher. And history has taught me that although I am thinking that I was selfish, I did the right thing. Colin Kaepernick, what has happened to his career? End of his career as soon as he started to speak out about racial injustice. Go back many years, those two Americans, Thomas Smith and
The Black Panther.
I forget the other gentleman's name, at Mexico. They stood up on the podium with the black glove. What happened to them? Thomas Smith lost his family. His marriage was destroyed because he was ostracized out of the society in America. He was banished. Even look at the Australian Norman. He came second. And when they were about to go up to on the podium, and the two Americans with one pair of black gloves were wondering how they could both demonstrate. He is the one who suggested to them, wear one glove each. That's all he did. He showed no disrespect, did no demonstration, nothing on the podium. And yet still Australia banished him when they heard that he was the one who suggested it. So when you take those steps, then, and even currently with Kaepernick, it is easy for people to just blackball you and you disappear out of society. So if I had done that way back in the 70s and 80s, I wouldn't be here talking to you now. I would not have had the career that I had. I would not have been able to go on Sky and say what I said.
You'd be in the realm of Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Or you're being selfish, not talking up. But history teaches you that perhaps talking up would have ended it.
This question is connected to what Daniel asked you, Mikey. I note, for example, the legendary Tiger Woods. He doesn't really speak about racial injustice at all. And another sport star, LeBron James. Indeed, LeBron James, though, he speaks about it when he's given the opportunity, and he also creates the opportunity to speak out about it. But I note recently another star of the sporting arena, the Swedish international Zlatan Ibrahimovic, told LeBron that, you know, he's bringing himself and the sport into disrepute by speaking about racial injustice and matters concerning color. How would you advise men and women of note, not just in the sporting arena, but in society, to posture on these issues?
Wherever you are, whether you are working in the corporate world, or you're a sports person, or you're just a man on the street, if you have an opportunity to talk about injustice in any form, talk up. If you think that your voice can make a difference, open your mouth. That's all I can tell them. When they're going to talk about you bringing sports into disrepute, is sport more important than life? Life is what is more important than sport. You play sport for a short period of time, and then you live after that to whatever age the good Lord gives you. And life is more important than sport. So if there are injustices, whether it is color, whether it is sexism, whether it is whatever, you have a voice to speak up. Open your mouth and speak up. If you have a platform, use that platform. Sometimes it is not easy for anyone to speak up because they don't get the right platform, and you can't just speak up just willy-nilly. I was given the opportunity by Sky. I worked for Sky now for 22 years. I had never spoken anything about racism or racial injustice working for Sky because I'm a cricket commentator. You don't just bring up a subject like that on a cricket broadcast. But when I was given the opportunity, I spoke up. And that is the thing. You don't just speak up to spoil something else.
Which would you want us to remember you most for? Speaking up when you had the opportunity about racism, or your legacy as a cricketer?
To be honest, Daniel, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't think about legacy and what people remember me for. I live my life. I do what my heart and my faith tells me to do. And whatever will be, will be.
And
A
what
lot of things I've done and I've said, people don't necessarily like it. People have been cursed doing cricket broadcasts. I've been cursed for certain stands that I take. But as I have told people, I am not a twin. I was born alone. I live my life the way I see I should live it and the way my parents taught me to live.
and quickly, Mikey, what do you hope to be the lasting impact of the book which you have penned?
To teach people. I've got to teach people so that people, I want them to learn and then they can go back and do their own research if they don't believe what they have read in the book. Let me give you one thing. We're in the middle of a pandemic now. You hear them saying that the father of immunization and inoculation was a British doctor, Jebson. What do you remember his name? Because there are so many things went through my head about this book. That is a lie. The first man to introduce inoculations and immunizations into the Western world, this part of the world, was a black man, an African slave, going back up to about 1813 or something like that in Boston. He is the one who taught his slave owner how they treated it in Africa, that smallpox was ravaging Boston. And he told them that in Africa, what they did, they took some of the pus out of a sore of somebody that was sick with smallpox, inserted it into a cut in a healthy person, so that that healthy person, their body could then fight against this invading object, whatever it is. That is how it started. And that's the same thing of vaccination now. Yeah?
Yes.
Vaccination, they inject something into you so that you can fight against it, so that when you come against a real thing, your body has already identified this thing as an enemy and fights against it. He is I can tell you the name of the man. Onesimus, Onesimus.
Indeed, important information for our people to know. As we let you go, Mikey, remind us the book, Why We Kneel, How We Rise, is to be published when?
June 24th, Simon & Schuster.
Okay, and how can it be accessed?
I think it's going to be on Amazon. I think as a matter of fact, you can pre-order on Amazon. But the plan is for it to be in bookstores around the Caribbean. I know it will be in bookstores immediately June 24th here in the UK. It will be available immediately on Amazon UK on the 24th. But I think other Amazons around the world, except the United States, you can pre-order the book.
Lovely.
But eventually they'll be in bookstores around the Caribbean.
Awe-inspiring, Michael Holding, as always, listening to you. And, you know, as a legendary cricketer, your presence and your comments about how we rise in these circumstances are invaluable. Thank you so much for standing up.
Thank you for having me.
Michael Holding is a former West Indies fast bowler and a noted cricket commentator, now an author.